guys, my name is Erin, and normally I would say from the Sipping on Some Crime podcast, but I'm actually here with a new project called the Runaway Effect. Runaway, one word, but carries so much meaning, especially when you label a youth with that word. I, myself, understand what it's like to be a runaway youth, saddled with that label, and the damage it causes when I was a youth all the way into my young adulthood. And there are still some things that I am struggling to come to terms with and heal from the effects of having that label. I've had the amazing opportunity to work with families of the murdered, missing youth and learn about how the runaway label affected so many cases from the very beginning and the damage that it has done. I know one of the biggest struggles I had as a runaway youth was feeling like I had no resources and no power in the situation. I didn't have any adults that I felt like I could turn to or trust in the system because the system is broken. I continuously thought about when I was a runaway and what would my resources be today. And I started researching, as a runaway youth, what are my resources? What gives me the ability to have some control and power in the situation? And honestly, it is still so very limited. Are we further than where we were when I ran away? Absolutely. But we're not far enough. We have a lot of problems in the system. We have a lot of problems with funding. We have a lot of problems at the local, state, and federal level. And those are things that I would like to talk about, address, and cover. I actually have a whole list, a pretty big list of things that were already important to me coming into this before I started researching. These were the bullet points that were important to me, things that I experienced or things that I have experienced working with families who also had children labeled as runaway in the murdered and missing community. So these are some of the things that we're going to cover: reunification camps and facilities, social workers, guardian ad litems, therapists, foster cares, the system as we call it, child protective services, and I know I'm not the only one that has huge qualms with those guys. The Runaway and Homeless Youth Act in its conception from 1974 to today. This was an important act that got passed that has to be reauthorized, I believe, every 4 years. We'll do a deep dive into that, about how that has come and helped society's perception on runaway youth at the local and state levels, and how much work we have left to do and how we can help them. Parent and guardian perspective of the runaway youth is important, and the youth's perspective of being a runaway is extremely important. How a child or why a child is labeled a runaway and how it affects an investigation and media perception of that child. This is a very important topic that goes back years that we're going to discuss. How do social workers, guardian ad litems, law enforcement, nonprofits, and social programs aimed to help runaway children? This is something that I find very important because we have lack of funding even for studying and understanding runaways. That means that we have to have nonprofits step in and fill the gaps where our state and local communities and governments are failing. We definitely want to talk about the dangers of the runaway label and how we change the vocabulary and definition around runaway so that when this label is used, how do we make sure that it's not tied to the bad kid, the troubled kid? And then, of course, youth facilities. And we definitely want to cover the juvenile detention system. Big issues there. This project has been on my mind for years, but I really decided to dig my feet in this year. I wanted to approach the internet as if I was a brand new runaway youth and find out what information was out there for me and how I can learn about resources, how the system works. I wanted to approach it as a parent. And honestly, we don't have enough information out there. So I'm hoping to fill in the gaps, and I'm hoping you'll come along in the journey with me. And if you think of anything else that we need to narrow in on and cover when it comes to the runaway effect, please let me know. I am happy to dive in and start researching it. I know this video was a little long, but it is a pretty big project, so I was trying to make the introduction to it as short as possible. Thank you to those who have stayed, and I hope you continue along with me on this journey.